Welcome back to The Explainer. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're stepping into a narrative that's, well, it's incredibly dark and deeply complex. We're doing a microanalysis of the Miranda's rescue investigation, unfolding right now in Humboldt County, California. And listen, this isn't just your standard story about a local animal sanctuary having a tough time. It's actually a sprawling, multi-agency true crime investigation. We're talking the FBI, the USDA, the California Department of Justice, the whole shebang. So we're going to take the raw source material, public records, and insights from law enforcement and break it all down for you. Our goal? To unpack exactly what happened, what the data actually shows, and the complicated legal realities surrounding the whole thing.
So here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the midnight exhumation, move right into the sheriff's investigation, break down the missing dog math, examine the arguments and counter-arguments, and finally, look at a pretty glaring legal loophole. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The Midnight Exhumation, a grisly discovery.
You know, what's truly fascinating about how this case broke wide open is that it wasn't sparked by a routine police patrol or some state audit. No, it was spearheaded by local community advocates who literally took matters into their own hands. For years, rumors had been swirling about Miranda's rescue, this facility in Fortuna, advertising itself as a quote-unquote no-kill sanctuary. But in April 2026, two local women, veterinary technician Jenna Moore and animal welfare advocate Jennifer Raymond, decided they had to act. Raymond actually went as far as purchasing the property next door just to monitor the rescue. It's intense, right? Well, a trail camera they set up caught footage of suspicious burials. So on the evening of April 26th, they snuck through a fence onto the property and dug up a hole in the ground. By May 1st, they handed the exhumed bodies over to the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office, which immediately triggered a search warrant.
The details of that exhumation are just harrowing. According to the reports, they pulled 8 dead dogs from the ground, and the bodies were actually still warm. Several of them had what appeared to be bullet holes, but maybe the most chilling detail involves a cane corso mix named Zora. According to the source material, just one single day before Zora was pulled from that mass grave, her former shelter, Oakland Animal Services, got a text message. It showed a photo of her on a leash with the message, "Zora adopted."
Section 2. The Sheriff's Investigation, the Kill Zone.
Okay, so once that undeniable physical evidence was handed over, local authorities brought in major backup. The sheriff's investigation quickly evolved into this massive operation. Hearing it straight from law enforcement, Sheriff William Hansel detailed the execution of a second search warrant in late June, and this one authorized excavating open fields using ground-penetrating radar. What they found was absolutely devastating. They uncovered 117 intact canine remains layered in mass graves, plus another 21 skulls and just hundreds of loose bones. And in a barn on the property, they found what essentially looked like a kill zone. We're talking over 600 dog collars, many still with identifying tags attached, spent .22 caliber shell casings, a rifle, and blood spatter. They also found 91 loose microchips, which is how they began the grim task of tracing these animals back to their original owners.
Now, as you can imagine, when these forensic details went public, social media just exploded. People all over California who had surrendered their pets to Miranda's rescue, totally believing it was this safe, no-kill haven where their dogs would live out their natural lives, were suddenly thrown into an absolute panic. You had families posting photos of dogs they'd surrendered years ago, terrified, wondering if their beloved pets were among those found in the graves. The public outrage was immediate, and honestly, it was visceral.
Section 3. The Missing Dog Math. Uncovering the discrepancy.
So how do we wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this? We have to look at the data. This piece of the puzzle was largely uncovered by Sabrina Woods, a shelter worker over in Solano County. She started firing off Public Records Act requests to municipal shelters all over the state just to track how many dogs were actually being sent to Fortuna. The number she found, 731. That is the staggering number of dogs completely unaccounted for in this investigation, according to the records.
Let's break that math down, because it's absolutely crucial. When investigators combed through business and adoption records from January 2025 to April 2026, which really isn't that long of a time frame, they found a massive void. At least 918 surrendered dogs were transferred to Miranda's rescue during that period. But investigators could only find verified adoption records for 116 of them. And when they physically searched the property on May 20th, there were only 71 dogs on site. So the math simply does not add up. The gap between the intake volume and the verified outcomes leaves us with that void of 731 missing dogs.
And it's important to remember, this isn't just an animal welfare issue, it's a massive financial one too. In fact, investigators are looking at this as a potential fraud case. Miranda's rescue entered into formal agreements with various shelters and cities, raking in money to care for these animals. To give you an idea, public records show the city of Rio Dell paid Miranda's rescue a flat fee of $1,900 every single month. Fortuna and Ferndale had contracts too. So the core allegation here is that the rescue is taking in thousands of dollars for animal placements, but instead of adopting them out or giving them sanctuary, the animals were being killed.
Section 4. Arguments and counterarguments. The allegations versus the defense. As we go through this explainer, we really have to remain objective and look at the competing narratives in this active case. On one hand, critics and investigators allege that Miranda was running a fraudulent enterprise. They're claiming he killed dogs just to make room for more incoming animals, charged high intake fees for profit, and outright lied to shelters and owners with fake adoption records, like we saw with that text about Zora. On the other hand, Shannon Miranda completely denies all the fraud allegations. His defense is that he never put down an adoptable animal. He insists he only humanely euthanized dogs that were severely suffering or posed a massive safety risk. And crucially, doing that to your own property isn't strictly illegal for a private citizen in California. He also claims this entire investigation is essentially a smear campaign driven by personal vendettas from people like Jenna Moore.
Miranda actually claims his sanctuary became a dumping ground for major city shelters trying to offload their dangerous dogs. His exact words were, every single dog that came up from Oakland Animal Services was drugged up on trazodone and gabapentin. For lack of a better word, they were so messed up they couldn't even walk. He frames his actions as a grim necessity. But is that accurate? Well, we turn to the analysis of dog behavior expert Paul Miller from Bay Canine. Reviewing the case, Miller points out that classifying every single transfer as highly aggressive and hopelessly medicated really misrepresents the reality of shelter behavioral assessments. As Miller explains, medications like gabapentin and trazodone are frequently used in modern sheltering just to alleviate normal kennel stress, not solely to mask severe aggression.
Section 5. The legal loophole. Why is it still open?
Okay, despite everything we've just covered, the facility is still operating. And this is the #1 question flooding the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office social media feeds right now. If investigators literally unearthed 117 dead dogs in mass graves and seized guns and blood-spattered collars, why hasn't Shannon Miranda been arrested, and why hasn't the rescue been immediately shut down?
The answer actually lies in California's regulatory framework. As animal welfare legal experts and Sheriff Honsall have both pointed out while reviewing the case, animal rescues are essentially unregulated businesses in the state of California. There's literally no specific state permit or license required to operate one. Because of that, the state can't just step in and revoke a license to force a closure. Until the district attorney officially files criminal charges, which, remember, requires a really meticulous, time-consuming review of all those financial and forensic records, Miranda remains a free citizen. He's still legally allowed to own animals and run his business. Right now, animal control and a veterinarian are just voluntarily monitoring the remaining animals on the property 3 times a week.
And what's really tragic about all this is that lawmakers actually saw this exact loophole coming. Assembly Bill 631 was proposed in the California legislature specifically to mandate strict reporting of intake and outcomes for private rescues. We're talking about the exact kind of data tracking that Sabrina Woods had to fight tooth and nail for through public records requests. If that bill had been law, a massive discrepancy of 731 missing dogs would have been flagged in a state database long before a trail camera ever caught a midnight burial. But that bill was held under submission. It is not law.
Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to take away from today's explainer. If the discovery of 731 unaccounted for dogs, a barn full of bloody collars, and layered mass graves aren't enough to trigger an immediate operational shutdown under current law, what will it actually take to reform oversight in our animal rescue systems? It's a heavy question for sure, but it's an absolutely essential one to ask as this criminal investigation continues to unfold. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, and I'll see you in the next explainer.